Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Oh, there's my dog. Hey, you know the question I've been. First of all, good to see you, dog.
Man, good to see you too, brother.
Here's the question I've been getting. So Charlamagne gets an hour? You know.
Well, I appreciate the time, and man, first of all, happy born day too, man. You're gonna be 65 Friday.
Wow, you know what's cool is I can get my vaccine now. You know?
You're a senior citizen.
Yes, I'm a senior citizen. I need my vaccine. By the way, I had a goatee and a mustache this morning, but I got Gorilla Glue in it, so I had to cut that off. And my face is hurting, but I'm here for you, dog. I'm here.
If you had that Gorilla Glue on it, you couldn't get that mustache off. All that.
That shit be on for life, man. Homegirl look crazy.
She do, man. But hey, you look good, my brother.
Thank you, man, and God bless you. You look great. I love that you. I don't know. Probably this will be shown later, but you did something about Paul Mooney this morning on Instagram, man. God bless you, because me and Eddie were talking about him yesterday, and it was like, you know, one of those conversations. I wonder how Paul is doing. I wonder if we can FaceTime him. And then what you did today, I was like shocked. It was like you were hearing us.
Yeah, we do a segment on the show. We just celebrate, like, you know, black historical legends during Black History Month. So that's why I did that. And what he said was so timely to now, because, you know, people always be like, oh, Black people can't be racist. But I do want to ask you, since you brought it up, because I always think about y'all, man, because from the outside looking in, it always seemed like unity and group operation has been a thing for y'all generation of comedians. Well, at least with the Black Pack. You know, with yourself and Eddie, Robert Townsend, Keenan Ivory Wayans, and Paul Mooney was a part of that as well, right? Absolutely.
There is an early picture where Paul Mooney is in that photo with me and Keenan and Eddie. And we want, you know, I joked about this in Chris Rock's dressing room, and it was on Instagram. It's interesting, you know, Prince, you know, the famous situation at the Beverly Theater where James Brown is performing and Prince and Michael Jackson both showed up?
Well, no, I saw that on the BET Awards. Is that what you're talking about?
The one where Prince grabbed a light pole and fell in the audience?
No.
Okay, I have to send you this, but because it's too long a story. But my point was that legends and goats haven't always gotten along. And I love that Chris and Chappelle, as good as they are, they don't compete. They drive each other higher. And that's the way Richard and Eddie were. My memory, because, you know, Richard was a friend of mine. I was sitting with Richard when he died. I remember Richard, not when he died, but in the end, we used to sit and watch TV. Charlamagne, and you tell me when I'm talking too long. I remember times sitting with Richard, and one time I said, Richard, who do you miss? Because it would just be us watching TV. And Steve Harvey, the Hightower show was on. And he said, I would like to see Steve Harvey. And I said, really? And I went the next day, found Steve and brought Steve to Richard's house. And there were many things that, like one time I brought Quincy because he missed Quincy, but he couldn't leave. And one time he has this little cart, right? And he said, I hear Eddie Murphy has a movie out. And I said, yeah. He said, can we go see it? And he was willing to leave the house. I put his little cart in the back of my Rover, and I rented a theater at Paramount, the Sherry Lansing Theater, and me and Richard sat and watched the Eddie movie. What movie was it? It was a sequel to Cop.
Okay.
It's one of those, and he loved Eddie, and I love when the goats are talented and confident enough to hang out and drive each other higher. And that's like, I went on the road, did a couple dates with Chappelle and Chris Rock, and I loved their relationship. You know, there was never jealousy. Nobody was ever hating on the other and falling off light poles at the Beverly Theater and stuff like that, you know?
So did Richard want to meet Steve because that's his illegitimate son? Because Steve and Richard they look they look alike. Why he wanted to see Steve? Well,
you know, it probably was some kind of synchronicity in looking at a mustache and saying, I like him. and by the way, he had met Steve one other time too. I think Steve told me they had met someplace. You know, it might have been some visual connection, but with Richard, it was probably because Steve was funny. And in those times when you're in your bed and that's all you do is sit with your friend and watch TV, laughter is healing. Laughter is the greatest thing ever. It's why I'm happy this movie is coming on March 5th. I know it's not much in times like this when we have food lines and people dying, but I'm sure glad that on March 5th, I can take people away for an hour and a half and make them laugh.
That's why I wanted to ask you about the Black Pack, because you and Eddie's relationship, the chemistry is always there. Why is that unity so important then? And how have y'all helped each other over the years?
Wow, it's interesting. You know, he's a rich guy. He don't need no help. But I think we've all had, you know, we know what the other does. Stand-ups are very cliquish. Mm-hmm. There's this thing, we think we're the most talented people on the planet. We think stand-up is the hardest thing in the world to do. And there's a tremendous respect. Don't get me wrong. There's some comics that stand in the back of the comedy store and they hate on you. But for the most part, we're very cliquish. Mm-hmm. And I think Eddie and I met, we understood each other. And it's kind of cool that we're still friends, because friendships, you know, don't last.
That's right.
Sometimes when there's money and competition and that kind of stuff in the mix.
How did you and Eddie even become the friends that y'all are?
Eddie and I met through Keenan Wayans. We were, Keenan called me back in the days when you didn't have a cell phone. You call somebody at home, if they don't answer, fuck them. But, you know, I got a call, it was Keenan. He said, come to the Improv about 9. And he said, Eddie's gonna work out because he's in town to do the Tonight Show. So he needed to work out his set. And I got there and we were standing in front waiting for Eddie to arrive. And Keenan introduced me to Eddie. And Eddie said, I wanted to meet you in person because my mother thinks we look alike. Nigga, you don't look like me.
Y'all don't look nothing alike.
Yeah, the second sentence Eddie said to me was, nigga, you don't look like me. And Damon Wayans was parking his car. This is a great story. Damon starts walking down the street and he's walking a little effeminate, very effeminate. And
like Men on Film?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I hadn't met him. And so he put his hand out, he shook my hand. And you know, if somebody is really acting like that, you don't laugh because that's who they are. Yeah, you know? Yeah. So I didn't know. I had never met Keenan's brother. And finally, he came out of the character. And I realized this guy is a funny motherfucker and he can lock into a fucking character. And that character, because Eddie's standing there, that character ended up a valet parking guy in Beverly Hills Cop.
Wow. You know, I'm wondering, like, were you hesitant in any way to do a sequel to a classic like Coming to America?
Oh, yes. Because there are gods that walk the earth. You're afraid of criticism, you know, from Charlamagne to somebody on Twitter to like, hey, I've been buying a coffee and the barista said to me, I heard y'all gonna redo that movie. Don't fuck it up. That's my movie. My family watch that movie once a year together. And you realize there are people who are afraid for you to go to work. They don't want you to do it. They don't want you to fuck with it. And you start thinking, I'm like, wow, if the barista is nervous, what's Charlamagne gonna say? What, you know, I mean, there are a lot of people who see it as this cult film that they grew up with and they love. And there were people who really didn't want us to do the sequel. But I think we did it. And I think the people who are truly fans of it are gonna like what we did.
If people do think-
Hey, by the way, not to interrupt, did they let you watch it?
Yeah, I watched it.
Okay, I just wanna make sure so I can tell you certain things. Because I know the last time we talked, there were some friends of yours who you didn't know were in that movie.
Yes, and there's a lot more people I saw in the movie. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Now, if people don't like the sequel to Coming to America, do you think it will affect the legacy of the first film?
No, I think the second one will stand on its own as just a statement like, I loved the first one. Mm-hmm. You know, I don't think it'll hurt the legacy, but I also think they'll love it because, you know, it's like a great Michael Eric Dyson book. You like chapter 1 And it's the same dude talking in chapter 2, continuing his thoughts and his flowery language. These two things work together. Like, I love the fact that your kids and my kid will be able to watch this, and within this movie, even if they haven't seen the first one, it will be explained that there was more that happened that night when I said, I'm gonna tear you apart and your friend too. That entire night evolved and morphed into something else. And through the magic of film technology, like, there's this movie that I was watching, and I'm looking and I'm like, that young dude right there looked like De Niro.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it was De Niro, and they have this process by which they can make you look younger these days. Mm-hmm. So me and Eddie were talking about it, and he said, yes. He said, they did that with Arnold. And he said, with that idea, we can go back and we can have a reprieve of what happened that night, and we can go from there into a sequel. And I think it was Arnold's young makeup in that process that gave him part of the idea for this.
What took so long for the film to come out? Because I've been hearing about this sequel for at least, it seemed like 15 years, honestly.
Yeah, and here's the crazy thing, Charlamagne, and it's why I love when you ask those kind of questions. None of that stuff was ever true. Really? There was never a talk. We had actually decided, we're fans of the movie too. It was great. We did it well. We're going to leave it where it is. And trust me, I'm not papered up like Eddie. If he said, let's do Coming to America 2, and it's about us going to Wakanda with R. Kelly, I would sign up and I would do it. It's like, whatever my life is, like, Akeem, the plane smells like piss. Whatever the fucking joke were, I would handle it. But we loved the first one and had decided to never do a sequel. And then he heard the idea. And that idea went through a lot of incarnations. Like, for instance, when he first told me the idea, I said, I kind of like that. And he went to the original writers and wanted them to craft just the format and get the technical stuff right, and then go to Kenya and modernize it and make it funny. So he had a process. And I said, we're going to have to cast a son for you. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, I got that. And I said, who? He says, Tracy Morgan. And I said, no, Eddie, Tracy Morgan is funny every day he wakes up, but you all look about the same age. He can't be your son. It's like, we can't have Coming to America with Morgan Freeman as your son found in America. That doesn't work. But he knew that whatever he did, he wanted Tracy in it. So he made him the uncle, and they did a casting call, and Jermaine Fowler came in and crushed it on his audition. From what Craig Brewer told me, the day he came in, it was over because they loved Jermaine. So the bottom line is, it took 4 more years after that day that he let me read the draft. It took 4 more years to get it right. And but there was never supposed to be a sequel to such a degree that I would look on the internet and I was baffled. I would call Eddie and I'm like, is there something you're not telling me? Because I would see one sheets with Tiffany Haddish. And then I would call Tiffany Haddish and she was like, I wish y'all would, she actually said, I wish y'all would do the fucking movie so people stop putting me on a fake ass one sheet. Because there were these one sheets that had people that people wanted in it.
Yeah, I saw a version that they said Aaron Magruder wrote, and that got me super excited. I'm like, oh man.
Now, I must say, I did read and sit with Aaron, so I heard his idea, but it never went beyond hearing it. You can imagine, first of all, it's not for me to decide. I saw Eddie meet with Ryan
Coogler.
And Eddie was like, this guy's a genius and he wants to do Coming to America 2. And so they met. So there have been meetings, but not one meeting led to a second meeting. But I know I saw Magruder's idea, and what he does and how funny he is.
Absolutely,
but
genius.
That never got Eddie off. He just wanted to leave it, and it was his choice.
You know what was interesting about the film? It's a lot of different things, but Reverend Brown, in the sequel, he's portrayed as this sexist, chauvinistic, misogynistic pig. Like, what made y'all address him in that way in the film? Because, when I was younger, I didn't, of course, when you're older now, you look back and you realize that. But when I was younger, I didn't think that. So why paint him in that light in this film?
You know, I didn't think that either. And maybe it's because it's a character I've created and I don't want to think of him as an asshole, you know. But the bottom line is I went back after I read the new stuff. I went back and I watched him take this turn where he says something like, I didn't come here to preach to y'all. And he pauses and he looks at the girls at some point and he goes in and Larry Flint can't make it like this. You know, only God can make it like this. And I started saying, even if he's not in the church, this motherfucker's thinking about pussy. He's thinking about, I mean, I think the Reverend even has the women turn around so he can see their ass and show them asses to the people in the audience. Now he's a dangerous character because we as men have come a long way and we've grown. But the bottom line is he still compares togetherness and unity to two sumptuous breasts squeezed together. You know what I mean? So he's a weird one. I'm nothing like him, and I blame Kenya Barris for everything.
But it did seem like y'all were very cognizant of this hypersensitive time of outrage that we're in. Like y'all didn't necessarily want to offend, especially in regard to the women. So what were those talks in the room like? Because even stuff like the bavers, I was thinking like, okay, if they're doing it like this, they might not have the royal bavers, but I saw y'all had a balance. Y'all had the men bathers too in certain scenes.
Yes. Yeah, you know, it's like, hey, Eddie had a bather and a toothbrusher the first time, and the second time around, Leslie Jones got her pussy eaten.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You know,
I don't want to give it away. Yes.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it's an equal opportunity movie. You know, the thing I love, and not to get mushy, but in these times with the Harvey Weinsteins of the world and the dilemmas that we've seen, it's making us a better society. It's changing men. And I love that the movie addresses the fact that our old attitudes have to fucking change towards women. There's a lot of that in this. And I'm proud of that.
I wanted that to be explored more, especially with Akeem's daughters in the movie. I feel like they could have went deeper on that. Yeah,
you're right. And I can't speak for Kenya and Craig Brewer, but I love that it didn't go deeper, especially now in the atmosphere that we're living in, what March 5th is going to present. I love that people are going to be able to escape from heavy subjects. You know, I remember a Trump joke that's out, and like the barbers were going to be mega supporters, you know, and it wasn't because they like Trump, it was because they like Herman Cain. And, you know, it's like, you know, they were those guys like, well, Herman Cain, a Republican, I'm gonna follow that nigga. He make a good pizza too. And it was gonna be a lot of shit like that. And then Herman died, and there was a big decision to make this a funny love story that doesn't get heavy and approach the problems of society. And now that we're here in 2021 and it's gonna come on March 5th, I love that people will be able to watch the movie and escape just for a minute.
You know, the barbershop scenes, they make me want to see a spinoff of just that. Have you and Eddie thought about doing that, like a series of just the barbershop scenes?
I thought about that way back in the day, but I think that went away because we kind of have that in a movie called Barbershop, right?
I mean, yeah, but it's something that y'all do in that barbershop, maybe because it's this older characters. And, you know, there's nothing more unfiltered than older black men. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's different watching them in that setting than barbershop movies.
Yeah. Wow. I just always thought that was something that never was talked about because that movie came out. But that's a good Eddie question. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna ask him and then we'll all FaceTime you later.
All right. Listen, y'all are comedians. You know what I'm saying? Y'all don't bite your tongue, but things have changed drastically from the first film. Did being politically correct or having to be politically correct in certain moments impact the comedy at all?
Absolutely. Just like when I do stand-up, sometimes you're nervous. I was doing stand-up one night before COVID, and this dude was sitting watching me like this, Charlamagne. And he was just recording it all. And we got him to pull it down off the YouTube. But the problem is when I'm in a little club working out, the jokes ain't finished yet. I learned what's wrong and what's right, and you adjust things. I hate people to tape it then, because you know you can get in some trouble. But political correctness, it makes you think about it a lot. When I don't like to think, I just like to do it. And like Coming to America, I remember when I saw the line where my barber addresses breast in Africa. Mm-hmm. And I think his term was them long sloppy titties.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm like, oh man, I'm going to come back and do this sequel and end up in comedy jail. You know, I'm gonna get canceled because of this shit. But it was funny, and titties is a funny word. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna blame it on Kenya.
That's it. That's it. You know, you talked about Eddie being like rich, and there was a time when Eddie was one of the biggest stars in the world. I mean, he's an icon now, but I'm just talking about like just a red hot superstar. Was there ever a moment where you had to check him because he might have been getting big headed and fronting on you?
Wow. You know what? I mean, he's a good friend, man. I mean, you probably have a friend. I'll tell you something about Eddie. Eddie will say some shit to me, and we'll be boys doing what guys do. But I've seen someone say something about me to Eddie, mm-hmm. and it's like, hey, motherfucker, that's my brother. And so we say a lot of crazy shit to each other, and we argue just like friends do. But when our backs are against the wall, you know, we ride or die when it comes to that friendship.
Mm-hmm. I've always looked up to you in the talk show space, man. You know that. You know, I've said that a million times. Had the pleasure of telling you that.
Hey, man, you know what I think of your work. I mean, when people ask me about this shit, you know, like during the election, I'm like, it looks like they don't need me on the planet, because Charlamagne is taking everything I dreamed of doing and tried to do to the next plateau. And wow. With you on the planet, I can stay home.
Well, you know, I reference you all the time, man. You're one of the reasons I even want to do a talk show. When I I was a guest on Stephen Colbert's show one time, and he let me sit behind the desk, and I made the audience do the woof 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 woof. You know what I'm saying? Like,
hey, yo, dog, I just had shoulder surgery from all the years of doing that shit. I had my shit replaced.
You serious?
I'm like an old fucking quarterback, Charlamagne. I'm like, people do that to me now, and I go to the other arm.
What was your experience like as a black male talk show host in the 90s?
Oh, man. It was hard because, well, first of all, fuck hard. Hard is what my uncle did at Jones and Lockland Steel, or what my other uncle did at Chevrolet. But there were times, you know, I remember one time a reviewer referring to me as a monkey. And it's like, hey, you could imagine back then, it was different. And we've become a little more politically correct, but it was hard. And, you know, huh?
What was the context?
Yeah, he was talking about my movement on stage, you know, because I don't stand, you know, I was a stand-up and I move a lot. And it's crazy, Charlamagne. It's the things I could tell you. But you know what was the hardest sometimes? I had a desire to leave the business different than I found it. Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring Black people into it. I remember asking the president of Paramount for an intern program because there weren't enough Black writers, and there had never been any in late night who write jokes every night. So I started an intern program. My first intern was John Singleton. Wow. And he wanted to direct. And the coolest thing in the world was this guy on my set who sometimes I would say, well, why is John Singleton in the hallway where talent is? And he would always wander away from the interns and go say hello to a guest like Cuba Gooding Jr. And it's weird that so much of the prep for that movie in his mind and in his heart and meeting people and networking was done on the show. Wow. And at that time, it was like, hey, man, you're supposed to be Xeroxing the paper that they gave you. But now I look back and I'm glad he said, "Fuck off, sir. I don't want to do that." You know,
John Singleton said that to you?
Well, no, he didn't say no. He didn't. He didn't say, he would. But I love that he didn't do what I said all the time. Like there were times the interns weren't allowed on the stage, and there were times I would walk into the booth, and John Singleton was watching the director. And now I look back, and I'm so glad that he didn't do what I said do. You know, and so we had young writers and interns, and I was able to put a lot of hip hop on. I was able to try to do anything that Oprah and Johnny weren't doing. And Oprah wasn't crazy about hip hop back then. So I got to have this lane in this world all to myself. But one of the hard parts was in starting that. I remember going to Paramount and saying, I want to book this group. And I knew that I was gonna have a hard time. I had to approve all the bookings early on. And I wanted to do NWA. And one of the people in the meeting knew who it was. I had a cassette tape that Ice Cube hand delivered to me. He brought it to the set because Ice Cube hated me for many years.
Why?
Because I wasn't able to pull it off. It was early on, and I wasn't able to get Paramount to, he wanted to do Fuck the Police. And I was the president of, I was the national ambassador of DARE and all kind of stuff, which meant I went to schools with cops. And so Paramount wouldn't let me do it. I remember finally when they started letting me do stuff, I wanted to do Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown played me 2 songs. He played me My Prerogative and Don't Be Cruel. And I said, I want to break both of them motherfuckers. He said, no, just one. I said, I want both of them, Bob. It's not like the Tonight Show gonna let you break it. So I went to Paramount and I said, I want to do 2 songs in one night. I'm going to do it on a Friday night, and I'm going to do one in the early part of the show and one at the end of the show. I'm going to do Prerogative last. And they didn't want me to do it. And it was interesting. They didn't even, like when I said Bobby Brown, they said, look, I'm sure she's very talented. And I said, whoa. She. And they said, Bobby Brown she was the spokesmodel on Star Search, right? And I'm like, no, motherfucker. Bobby Brown is a man. And Bobby Brown was a new addition. And so I realized they were turning me down on stuff they didn't understand. And you have to realize that in those times, when I'm saying Bobby Brown and when I'm saying Q-Tip and when I'm saying, you know how people sit in the band at the Tonight Show, or David Sanborn sits in with Paul Schaefer. I want to have some hip hop guys with my posse. And I wanted to do stuff different. And I had to fight for a lot of that.
Man, it shows me how much value one Black person in the right position can have. Because one thing that you always showed us, it was so much value in us. And that's one thing I love about the Arsenio Hall show. There was a time where there was a need to highlight hip hop and Black stars. Do you think that Black talent is adequately represented and highlighted now?
Well, not to keep kissing your ass, but when I listen to you or watch you, I hear about stuff I don't know about. And I think that's important. You go deep into hip hop, and you and Envy, y'all know some folks. And I love going that deep. I love going deeper than Ryan and Kelly will go with hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and you do that. I love Trevor Noah's position in the business because he's brilliant and he deals with an area of show business that Soul Train didn't deal with. He deals with an area of society that we've never seen a brother deal with. I would love to see more people so we have more variety, because there's a huge space between Charlamagne and Trevor. Trevor, by the way, who's in Coming to America. Yeah. I won't even tell what he does, but you can imagine, But the bottom line is there's something in the middle. And I know there's Jesus and Morrow.
Jesus and Morrow, yeah, my guy.
Yeah, and so, but the bottom line is, like the NBA, I don't mind having 5 people in late night, and a white boy coming off the bench. We can flip it up a little bit,
I'm so happy this movie is coming to America 2 on March 5th, because really for you in a lot of ways, because I've told you this before, what is Arsenio Hall waiting on to tell his story?
Well, see now, you being friends with Wendy makes this real relevant. The world just saw her documentary.
Mhm.
There's no Calvin. Is his name Calvin?
Kelvin, yeah.
Yeah. There's nobody like that in my life.
So you need a villain? You gotta have a villain.
Yeah, you know, none of my women have ever had niggas down the street in a house that I bought, you know. But that stuff makes good television. That makes good storytelling. I'll be honest with you, man. I think a documentary on me might be boring. I mean,
Stop.
there's no drug problem, you know, unless, hey, by the way, weed has gotten me through 2020 and part of 2021. You know,
You edibles or you smoke?
Yeah, I'm a smoker. I'm a big weed smoker, but you need a cocaine problem, or you know, you need to have a scene where you put heroin in your asshole at some point for a good documentary. My documentary would be a guy who came from Cleveland and did very well, and then wrote a letter to Paramount and said, I want to move on. I think I want a family and I want to do more acting. You know, that's not a good documentary.
Man, you skipping a lot, bro. I mean, even when you think of 15-year-old Arsenio Hall growing up in Cleveland, Ohio, did you have any visions or see any signs of you growing to be this iconic talk show host, comedian?
Well, I don't even think I knew the word iconic, but I did want to make a living. I was acting in school plays, and I was a magician. And I'm thinking, you know, I won second place in the Ohio magic competition. And I'm thinking there are no Black magicians. There was one other Black magician, a great magician named Goldfinger and his wife Dove, and they were amazing. But I was thinking, I'm going to try to fill a void that's not filled. So that's what I thought I was going to be. And I entered another comedy competition in Columbus, Ohio one time. And I did tricks on stage where you invite someone from the audience and you talk to them while you do it. And a guy came up to me after the show and he said, young man, you're a great magician. But you know when you'll become really rich and famous? When you put away the doves and talk. He said, the 5 minutes you spent talking to the guy from the audience, he said, I've never seen a 12-year-old do something like that. You know, but it was bullshit, Charlamagne. It's like you're doing a card trick and you say, okay, say the magic words. And they say abracadabra. I'm like, oh, I'm a Black magician. You got to say ham hocks or some shit like that. You know, I was a 12-year-old writing jokes. And the bottom line is eventually I got rid of the doves and the tall boxes. You know, my garage band disbanded. And I did stand up at a club in Chicago and I saw my future that night.
But early on, a lot of people told you that you out of your damn mind, right? You need to go
get a
factory job or something.
Yeah, you know, you have to remember, I'm not going to Hollywood high school then. Mm-hmm. I'm in Cleveland. I'm in a neighborhood, and the only person who got me, and this is weird, the only person who got me was a young man named Steve Harvey.
Wow.
Steve Harvey and I had friends who booked the talent shows around the city. And, you know, we knew we wanted to entertain. And we both, ironically, I went away to Ohio University for 2 years, but then I transferred to Kent State. I get to Kent State, Steve's there. And we go play basketball every day after classes. Every day we got a bag under our desk and we go to Memorial Gym, call winners, put your name on the board and play basketball and talk about what we want to do in the future. There was a point where a movie called Car Wash came out and Franklin Ajayi came to our school. I'm already a Richard Pryor fanatic. Steve's a Richard Pryor fanatic. And I don't know if he made it to the concert, but I not only went to see Franklin Ajayi do stand-up in the auditorium where Steve and I played by day. I went and saw him and I snuck backstage and I got to talk to him. And then I went to the after party with him because he didn't know where he was going. I got to talk comedy with Franklin Ajayi at that time. It was the most amazing night of my life. And then I went to see Al Green, who had a comic open for him. I knew what I was going to do. I graduated and I looked around for Steve and he wasn't there. Steve left and he'll tell you his part of the story when you talk to him. But Steve left and I didn't see him again for years until the Def Jam era. And Russell put him on. And back then he was wearing Cosby sweaters. It wasn't about no suit. It wasn't no suit player. He had Cosby sweaters. And we became friends again. And wow, look what he's done. And Steve tells this great story when you're interviewing him. His dad kind of read him the riot act. And his dad saw me on Solid Gold doing stand-up with Marilyn McCoo. And she introduced me. I did my little act. And Steve said his dad went nuts. He said, that's where you should be. If you wasn't fucking around doing crazy shit here in Cleveland, you could be out there with Arsenio and you could be doing stand-up comedy. Instead, you here. And he said that motivated him. His dad told him, you and that guy had dreams and you're here and he's there and he's proof that it can happen. So you can imagine whenever I see Steve, I always make him say thank you to me because I'm his inspiration.
No, listen, I say thank you to you because you're one of my inspirations. Like there's no me or there's no Steve without no Arsenio. And what's so crazy is you had so many legendary people and moments on the Arsenio Hall show. And you kind of answered this already. Do you even factor those moments into your own personal measurement of value?
Yeah, you know, I guess I do, but as many things that I did right, you know, there are a lot of people who hate me because they feel only Barbara Walters should interview Farrakhan, and I shouldn't have done it. So I got things from that era and moments in that era that people hate me for too, and you got to take the good with the bad. But that's who I was. I was Mr. Curious, and I remember meeting him, and he told me about the Million Man March, and he also said to me that I'd never heard this, and I thought it was important to the Black community. He looked at me and he said, because I asked him about Malcolm, and I said, I think the question that Black people want to know is your relationship with Malcolm in the end. And he said, I think I may have contributed to an atmosphere that killed Malcolm. And when he said that, I'm like, I gotta do this interview. And I already resigned from the show. I'd sent a letter to Kerry McCluggage and they let me do it. But a lot of people didn't like it. And I get that. I'm sure there are people who, you know, didn't like my interview with other people too. But you know.
So you resigned from the Arsenio Hall show. Like the rumor has always been Arsenio Hall got canceled because he interviewed the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yeah, I had sent a letter of resignation to the guy who was running Paramount prior to that. Paramount didn't have to let me do that, but they thought it was good TV to ask him these questions. And by the way, I brought in a man back then named Irv Rubin, who was head of the JDL, because I wanted to ask those questions too, not just the things that Black people were concerned about. So I tried to do it in that way. But yes, I had sent a letter in and resigned, and because they had to figure out what they were going to do with the show, they let me continue to do more shows while they figured it out. Because I remember the conversation, they came to me, they said, what would you do? We have Bill Bellamy under contract. Do you think he'd be good? And that was their conversation. They also brought up Jon Stewart, who they eventually gave the show to. Jon Stewart had a couple bites at the apple. He did a show back then after me because they went with him instead of Bellamy. And then of course, there's no timing greater in show business than God's timing. That's right. It ain't about when you want it, it's about when he want to give it to you. Because Jon Stewart changed the game, but not that night. Later on, they put him in the right place in front of where Trevor's life is now, and he was groundbreaking and changed the business. But back then it wasn't his time, but he replaced me.
Why resign though?
I wanted, like when you're doing a talk show, it might be similar to what you're doing. Every night I'm watching somebody's movie, I'm reading someone's book. There was no link back then. You had to go to a theater or someplace and watch somebody's movie. There was no laptop. There was no, like sometimes I can hit my laptop, the word speak, and it'll read somebody's book to me. And I just sit and listen. But back then you actually had to sit with Judith Light's autobiography and read it before the interview the next day. And there was a point where I wanted to act more. I did Harlem Nights in the nighttime. I would do my show all day and then shoot Harlem Nights at night. And Charlamagne, I love to act, man. I love to act. I wanted more time to pursue that. People would put me in movies as the talk show hosts, or they would use clips, and they still do that. Like recently, there's a Mr. Rogers movie, and they erased Mr. Rogers when I interviewed him back in the day, and they put Tom Hanks in. They can do stuff like that now. So my old interview is in the movie. So I guess you could call it typecasting. I wanted to act more. And something else that's really important for a man when it hits you, I felt that every day doing this, I wanted a kid, man. I wanted to be a dad. I remember the moment too. Magic had started coaching, and he was coaching the Lakers. And Cookie Johnson let me babysit EJ and take him to a game between the Lakers and the Clippers. And I'm sitting in my floor seat, and EJ is watching the game with me, and Irvin is to our right, and he's coaching now in a suit. And during halftime, I took EJ in the back just to let him just give dad a hug. And when I leaned over so he could kiss Irvin, you know how a water balloon, you can't hold it, it go down on this side, it go down on that side, it just be, you know how a water balloon does. That's how EJ started doing to get to his daddy and to kiss his daddy and hold his daddy, and he didn't want to let him coach the second half. Wow. And there was a moment that I don't know how to describe other than the way I'm doing it. There's no love like the love of a father and his son, a father and his daughter. And that moment, I always blame Cookie. That moment, I was like, I didn't want kids. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not gonna even say I didn't want kids. You know how when you don't make mistakes and you get around and you haven't gotten somebody pregnant, you worry. And I went to a doctor. I was like, I ain't never got nobody pregnant. And I mean, I used condoms and everything, but you're supposed to slip sometime. And I never had one of those situations. And I went to a doctor, and he said, I remember the term, he said I had slow swimmers.
Wow.
And I didn't even ask him for more information because that was just too embarrassing. I was like, okay, whatever. Because I think that means your dick broke. You got slow swimmers. And, but, you know, like I said, it's all about God, dog. Not you, but the other one. And the bottom line is eventually my girl got pregnant and my son was born. And I spent the next 21 years, you know, I was that dad at every game, at every play. And I tried to slide in and do work here and there, but you can't do Hollywood part-time. You know, I remember my lawyer, Nina Shaw, wanted me to go to a meeting, and my son's school called because he broke out. They were at some field trip, he broke out. You know me, I jump in the car, never got to the meeting, and you can't, my lawyer is Nina Shaw.
I know Nina, that's my lawyer too. One
Okay.
that firm. Del
Yes.
Shaw, Tanika, Moonves, and Finkelstein.
Yeah, Les Moonvez's brother is there. Well, I left her standing at Paramount one day because my son was swollen someplace. And I realized that the way I want to do this, I can't be accessible the way I need to be. But now he's a senior at IU. And the bottom line, Charlamagne, is I'm trying to work my way back into this motherfucker.
Mm. I remember watching you getting real emotional. I'm pretty sure it was with Oprah. And you were speaking about raising your son. And you said you never could find that balance between your career and raising him. So it's interesting that you're still trying to find that balance. You think you ever will?
Absolutely. Because he has his own apartment and a girlfriend now, you know. and children have a way of saying, Dad, I don't need that shit no more. I'm a grown man, you know. I have Arsenio on my license, so I'm good, you know. And the bottom line is, I think when he started college, I started doing stand-up again. I even went to IU. I went to do a comedy club in the town that he's going to school, and he brought all his friends. And when I talk about it, my heart hurts, man. I love my son so much, and that's so cool. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons he finished school online, do you realize they tried to hang a brother near the campus of IU?
No.
Yeah, man. My son showed me some video and I was like, we're going to go to school online, not just for COVID, but this is bullshit.
Yeah.
You know, there you can find it on the internet. They got this brother out in the woods and they try to hang him. I'm talking 2019, dog. I mean, 2020.
I do remember something along those lines. There was a time where there was a bunch of lynchings and stuff going on. I think I do kind of remember something like that.
Yeah, and they show the video and this brother is out in the woods with these white people with no shirts on. And my son showed me and he says, Dad, if you go down there, that's where the comedy club is in my apartment. He says, I'm not comfortable with Bloomington. And I said, yo, thanks to COVID, let's just do this online. So he's going to graduate, you know, this semester, but he's doing it with a computer.
Well, I'm sitting there thinking, like, what does that balance look like to you? Because I got 3 daughters, you know, like 12, 5, and 2. So like, what would that balance have looked like to you?
Wow, you know, I think the balance is different when you and your woman are together, and you and your woman have this great relationship. Me and his mom had a good relationship, but we weren't together at a certain point. And then you deal with, he's with me, he's with you, excuse me. But, you know, when you and your woman are together, you can, that's why there is no greater job on the planet than being a mom. I mean, whatever we pay Joe Biden, we should pay every mother $1 more, because it's an incredible responsibility, because you are raising the future. And you can come here and talk to me anytime you need to. And you can go audition, you can go meet with people, you can start a podcast network, and you don't worry about your girls because you got this great woman. And unfortunately, mine was a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, Joe Biden ain't making no money. Dr. Dre baby mama gonna come off way better than than Joe Biden.
Absolutely. It's fun. It's funny that when you become president, you actually, if you became president, you would have to take a decrease in pay. Yeah,
100%. 100%. You know, I want to go back to the show, Arsenio Hall show, because you relaunched it.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think it didn't work in this generation?
I think there are a couple reasons, but I'll be honest with you. Like, we didn't have Twitter, and we didn't have Charlamagne. We didn't have YouTube. If no SoundCloud, if Beyonce was around back then and she wanted to drop something, she couldn't do it on her own in the middle of the night. She'd have to call me. You know, I remember sitting in a restaurant and Tommy Mottola walked up to me and he said, I want to play a song for you. And he gave me a copy to take with me, A Vision of Love. Wow. And he was sitting with a young, beautiful girl. I told him his life then, if they had a title for it, it would be The Young and the Breastless, because she was just, she was just this young girl with this beautiful hair, and she was so sweet and enormously talented. And I got to put her on. I got to break Vision of Love. You don't need me for that anymore. In addition to that, there are things that I did and only I did. Fallon does them now. You know, the best Black band in the land is the house band for Jimmy Fallon. Yeah. Jimmy Kimmel, all the Jimmys, you know, you don't need a brother, all the Jimmys. Jimmy Kimmel does great stuff. I turned on the TV one night and Lunel was on Jimmy Kimmel. I not only need to do another I don't need to do another talk show, but it's all in good hands. I love that, because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I was the only place for somebody with Lunel's flavor.
But you know what? I still think it's a lane though, because just because Lunel's on Jimmy, that don't mean Jimmy has the cultural competence to talk to Lunel. You know?
Yeah, but
y'all conversation would be different than the Jimmy and Lunel.
By the way, I'll add this to it. When I was doing my thing, there was no Charlamagne, there was no Trevor Noah. A lot of these things did not exist. And you know, it was really weird. The reboot that I did, they fucked me with no Vaseline on that one, because what they did, and I shouldn't tell this story because we just mentioned that Les Moonves' brother is one of our lawyers, but I got this letter that the show was being picked up and I had a second season. And so I was going to this club on Sunday nights called the Comedy and Magic Club, and Jay Leno works there a lot. And Jay was like, hey, let me come on and read that letter and announce that you're being picked up. That would be a great thing. And I said, that'd be fun. Let's do that. So he was going to just, you know, a surprise walk on. He comes out and he says, I got a letter here. You know, and he's going to read this letter. And he reads the letter and everybody applauds and it's great. And I go out and celebrate. I smoked a lot of weed that night, Charlamagne. I was so happy that I was being picked up because I knew if I got a second year, I was going to work out the bugs and this shit was going to work. And I was going to make the impossible possible and make this reboot work. And then they called me a few days later and said, we changed our mind. I've never seen that fucking happen. And I played myself by reading Les's letter on the air and making that announcement publicly. And then they decided they weren't going to do it again. It was a hard time for me, a real hard time. You think staying at home with COVID looming was hard, to be picked up and then canceled publicly, that's a motherfucker, man. But I'm good. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm good.
Do you think social media improved the overall media landscape or hindered it?
I like it. For instance, when something would go down back in the day, I remember Ice-T. Sometimes when you look on Twitter, you see all the shit Ice-T thinks and some raw shit sometimes. You know, when I first wanted to put Ice-T on and he was going to talk about Cop Killer, you know, there was no Twitter. The only place to come and say, wait, Cop Killer, that's a character. I don't really kill cops. And when Schwarzenegger wants to do a movie where somebody gets killed, you all don't think that Arnold's killing people. It's the character. So why can't I express the feelings and thoughts in the inner city through my music? And that's where we did that. You know, the bottom line, God, I lost my train of thought because I'm also old.
You talk about the Ice-T and Cop Killer and that really being entertainment more so than anything else.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, you know, back then, if something was going on in your life, I remember Tupac called me one time and he said, they're accusing me of some shit, man, and I need to come on and talk about it. When Magic wanted to make his announcement, yo, dog, I need to come on and talk about this. That was the place. Now, there are people that don't even use their publicists. If there's a problem with your pregnancy or your marriage, you tell it on Twitter, you know, and I love that social media allows us to go directly to people. You know, how many times have you read something in the LA Times that's not true? You know, how many times have you seen a Black man's picture with the wrong name under it? That's right. The bottom line is social media has allowed us as entertainers and as people to take the power back.
But we also know that the power can be misused. For example, where were you when you found out that the internet had killed you off? You were dead. You died on the internet. Where were you when you found out you was dead?
You know, but the bottom line is niggas in the barbershop have said, I heard he OD'd, you know, so before Twitter, you know, hey, let me put it like this. The internet is wrong sometimes, but the white man was wrong many times. That's right. I remember after I left the first show, I'm walking through the airport. A dude walks up to me and he says, we just heard. And I said, heard what? That you have AIDS. And I said, excuse me? He says, you left the show because you have AIDS. This is a journalist in the airport. Wow. And I'm like, at that moment, how far reaching is this rumor? You know, that's what it was like. At least we have the opportunity now to correct it and to say it ourselves. And you're right. Sometimes, hey, Twitter had to take our president or our former president off of Twitter.
Yeah.
So Twitter needs referees, but I think we're better with it than without it.
Who told you that you had died, or who checked on you when that rumor came up about you
Well,
dying?
actually, the journalist, I told the journalist, I said,
But this was
I'm fine.
recently. This was in the past few years.
No, yeah. I guess at that point it's important to post on Instagram and make sure there's a clock behind you and a newspaper in front of you, so people know. It's like, no, this nigga took this picture today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think it's possible to even maintain longevity nowadays as a celebrity? You think it's possible? Because you, Eddie, y'all been around for a long time. We're anticipating a movie that came out 30 years ago. Do you understand that?
Yeah, wow. I think it's harder in the music game to stay relevant. That seems to turn over real quick. I remember a time when I heard of Tekashi 6ix9ine listening to you. Mm-hmm. And I felt like very shortly after he was in jail, and after that, no one was mentioning him. This shit, it rolls, man, it rolls. It's hard. I think also, Dave can be funny at 20 and Chappelle can be funny at 50. But the bottom line is music is a young man's game, and I think you get a window, and then don't nobody want to see an old motherfucker who's singing "You Can't Touch This," so it just goes away,
Yeah, when it comes to talk and comedy, the older you get, the more wisdom, the more knowledge, the more experience, so you truly do get better.
Yeah, I believe that, because like I said, Richard was my idol. And I remember the first album I ever saw Richard record. Actually, it was a video project at the New York Improv. And at the end of it, he says something like, I probably picked the wrong night to do my in-concert show, because he didn't do well. Mm-hmm. And shortly after that, I saw him get a Grammy for That Nigga's Crazy. And I think he did that in front of the Soul Train audience. And then later, he did Is It Something I Said and Bicentennial Nigga. And then I saw him in Blue Collar as an actor. And I felt like the older and smarter he gets, the more there is on his hard drive, the better he seems to get. And I think comedy and acting is like that.
I got a couple more questions. When we talk about growth and evolution, how much did you grow from the first film to this one as an actor?
Wow. I think I'm better. That shaman or that witch doctor I do, mm-hmm. The process for that. When Eddie wrote it, he wrote it for himself. And we were sitting around one day and I said, hey, I got some ideas for that character. And at a certain point he said, hey man, that makeup is 6 hours. You should do that, motherfucker. And I don't think I could have done it years ago. But yeah, I think, I study the great ones. And I think I'm a little better. By the way, he told me to do it. And then one night, Chappelle says, I want to be in that movie. And, wow. And I text Eddie and he said, let him do the witch doctor. So Chappelle was going to do it, but his schedule changed. And so I ended up doing it. But I actually watch myself now. And, I watch the characters that I've done 30 years ago. And I think I'm a little better as an actor, but we'll find out when the movie comes out. If I don't get no work, then I ain't shit. If you see me standing outside the studio when you get off work, that means I wasn't shit.
No, I'm gonna say, Arsenio, let's do this book. Please do a book on your life and your journey.
Well, you're doing the podcast stuff, but are you doing literary stuff too?
I got a book imprint with Simon & Schuster, Black Privilege Publishing.
Oh my God.
The first release comes out in May. It's Tamika Mallory's State of Emergency, How to Win in the Country We Built.
You're doing everything, man. When I was a kid, we called you Ed McMahon. You're doing You got your hand in a little bit of everything. You own Clydesdales, you have Budweiser, you have Star Search, you sit with Johnny. You're amazing. You're a dad.
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about doing some things, you know what I mean? And brothers like you who have inspired me, who I look to is icons, man. I feel like you've poured into me without knowing me. And now that I know you, you poured into me. But however I can assist you, I would love to, brother. Because when I look at you, about to be 65, that's a whole, I'm 42. That's a whole nother 20 something years. It gives me hope. Like life gets better. How do you feel? How do you process being 65? What are you feeling right now about to be 65? That's how I'm gonna end. I want to know. What do you feel?
Wow. I feel great. I feel blessed because I look around sometimes and some of my heroes are gone. Some of my friends are gone. I'm in great health and I'm still doing stand-up when the clubs are open. Gosh, 65, this is the new 65, dog, because I'm feeling good. I feel like a motherfucking mystical track, dog.
Brain working, dick still getting hard.
Yes, I feel good in this motherfucker.
Hey, Arsenio, I just want to tell you, man, you loved, you valued, you're appreciated. And I'm just happy that you exist on this planet, man. And I want everybody to go out there and check out Coming to America on March 5th. Well, you don't even got to go nowhere.
Yeah.
You can watch it at the house.
People can do it at home. And continued success, bruh. Say hello to the duo that sits in the studio with you every morning. I love you all, and God bless you.
And we're gonna get you in studio when this is all done, this COVID thing.
I can't wait to fly, nigga. I can't wait.
Yes, sir. Thank you, King.